Welcome to episode 6 of The Man from Edom, as this is part of the YAHOWAH blog, and I am your host, Craig Winn. Of course, this handsome fellow here, he is the Wookiee. He wants to be known forevermore as an internet influencer. I think it may have gone to his head. As we actually ponder what is quite serious, one of the most impressive statements made anywhere in the prophets is about this man from Edom, whom Yahshua Isaiah says, in collaboration with his own testimony, will save a great many. And there is no other analog to this anywhere to be found, not in the Torah, not in the prophets. And obviously, Yahweh and working through Moshe saved a great many, and clearly Dod in his defense of Yisrael saved a great many, and ultimately, as more people become aware of what Dod did, that would be David, in the fulfillment of Pesach, Matzah, and Bikurim, a great number of Israelites and covenant members will be redeemed as a result. But there is no statement that just lays it out and said, and a great many will be saved. And there's no questioning the verb. It's yatsa. It's or yasha. It's the primary verb for salvation, for deliverance from being removed from harm's way. There is no verb that speaks more clearly of this. As a matter of fact, the prophet's name, Yahshua, is based on this verb, yasha. Yahshua means Yahweh provides salvation. Yahweh delivers. So when he speaks of this collaborative effort, and he puts it in the context of a collaboration where the man from Edom is quite simply using Yahshua's testimony as the textbook, as the roadmap to redemption. And it is by what he says relative to Yahshua's prophecies and making them relevant to God's people at the right time that this marvelous result is rendered. And this is particularly important because of the fact that heretofore there had been not a single Yehudim, not a single Israelite who had benefited from anything God was offering. God's people were estranged. The prophecy is very clear that Yahweh looked over the centuries, and Yahshua was shown as well that there was no one, not a single person among the chosen people who chose to listen to God. Instead, Yehudim, Jews, through their religion, Judaism had written Yahweh out of their lives and erased his name. So this is really a big deal because we have gone now almost 2,500 years since the last time that anyone would be saved. Yahshua is duly impressed and also duly disappointed. He's disappointed in his people for making it so difficult, for it taking this long, for being a hindrance, for themselves really not being part of the solution, for God having to go outside of the tribe and find a goy that was willing to do the job. And so the prophet is disappointed, and yet he's excited that at least the job is being done. And you can almost tell that he senses that Yahweh made the right choice. Not that God really had a choice, but in using a goy, a nakar, a observant foreigner, as his choice of Choder and Zeroah, one cultivating the harvest, to get this accomplished. And I think it's particularly true when he realizes how dedicated this man from Edom is going to be. he saw what I have now experienced, which is over 100,000 hours of effort thus far. 24 years of dedication, almost every waking hour, to writing the 36 books that you see behind me, and now producing some 250 hours of video blogs as part of these live streamed programs. And it's not just time, because many people have devoted time, not necessarily to what God wanted done, but nonetheless, they've committed time. A lot of people should be doing time as well. But results, for the first time in, easily 2,500 years, and maybe closer to 2,700 years, someone actually understands God's story from beginning to end and can tell it to you in a way that is compelling, so that you understand it and are in a position to make an intelligent decision regarding it as to how you would like to participate in it and become part of that story. So the last passage that we considered as we were concluding our last program read as follows. So when there was no one to provide any support, this is Zechariah speaking, my Zeroah, the strengthened arm, sowing and distributing my seeds, what I have sown, and cultivating a productive harvest. Well, he will deliver victory for me by bringing salvation through me, even though my disappointment and my emotional turmoil remain. Yashayah, Isaiah 63:5. He is still speaking of the man who comes out of Edom at this time. And this is now the second time that he has told us that there's going to be salvation delivered as a result of this, Yasha. The second time the verb has been used, and the second time it's been used in collaboration with Yashayah's work, his prophecies. And it's the second time we've been told that while Yashayah, Isaiah, is ecstatic that his words are finally beginning to resonate with his people, and the result he intended and God intended through him is being delivered, he's also exceedingly disappointed that 2,700 years was squandered, and that God's people, rather than being part of the solution, were part of the problem. There's also something here that we have discussed previously, but needs to be reinforced, which is that the Edom Part, which is the bloody red man of the earth, who is productive and fruitful, and the man from Edom dressed in red, the same individual. And the common denominator up to this point has been not only that he delivers salvation by working with Yahowah in the way God intended, but also that he is the third and final Zeroah, specifically the one tasked with the responsibility of cultivating a productive harvest, both on the upcoming Katsir of Shabuah, which isn't very far away. It's 14 months from now. In fact, a little less than 14 months as we sit here today. And it will occur on the Shabat of May 22nd, 2026. At the very beginning, the outset of the time of Jacob's troubles, of Israel's confinement and tribulation, if you will. And again, the next gleaning will be on Towrah, another Shabbat, an evening of September 23rd, such that olives will be gleaned, where on Shavuot it is a wheat harvest. And this all leads to the ultimate sacrifice of the man from Edom, which is why he's dressed in red, and the Edom Part, the bloody red man of the earth, because he will volunteer to be sacrificed on behalf of Yisrael on Towrah as what is perceived to be the red heifer, to cleanse and prepare the adulterous woman that is Yisrael to be betrothed to her returning Messiah, who's David. This is the story that Yahowah has told, providing us with the textbook and the timing, and it is the one that I've been asked to fulfill. So as we continue to contemplate this, we must grapple with the realization that the Machiavellian notion that the ends justify the means, or said another way, that all's well that ends well, is neither valid nor moral. Too much, in this case, has been lost, with billions of souls needlessly squandered. Yes, Yahweh is intervening to save the day and reconcile his relationship with Yisrael. And yes, he will do so through the man from Edom, in collaboration with Yahowah's prophecies. But it shouldn't have been that way. Israelites have been so indignant, so rebellious for so many thousands of years that, well, Yahowah realizes that a different approach was needed. Because had Yahweh not intervened with the man from Edom, there was no chance that Israel was going to change at the last minute after 3,400 years of being recalcitrant, of being rebellious, of being irritating to God, of telling God to shut up and go away, of erasing his name, of denying his son and our Messiah, of misappropriating the Moed Mikre, of failing to understand the terms and conditions of the covenant, being over 200 years off in their timing. There was no chance that the pieces were all going to suddenly fall into place and they would see the big picture and be able to respond intelligently had God not intervened this way, specifically with the same individual who in the 11th chapter of Yahowah is called the Choder, whom Yahweh imbues with his 7 spirits, including the spirit of Yahweh, spirit of Chakma as well, which is wisdom, the ability to be able to process information intelligently and to form reasoned conclusions. The spirit of Bien, which is my favorite of all of the terms that Yahweh provides, which is this ability to make connections between things, to find the common denominator, and to form reasoned conclusions based upon many sources of information and examples. It is really the thing that sets me apart from the artificial intelligence that everybody is raving over, that I just constantly mock every time I'm around an AI, because their programming has rendered them incapable of exercising judgment. They don't have the rarest of all tools, which is a nasama, a conscience, and the ability to process information rationally. Now, I understand that most humans have squandered it and don't use theirs, but I can assure you I use mine. And it sets me, as a result, way above the most capable artificial form of intelligence. And it's the reason that I'm in this position. There were 2 other spirits that, in particular, that I wanted you to be aware of, that Yahweh provided, and one was the spirit of entirety, of being able to be the first to see God's picture and his story from beginning to end, to understand how the presentation of events in the Garden of Eden represent the conclusion of the story, where on Sukkah we were brought back into the conditions experienced in Eden. And also the spirit of understanding, of knowledge, of being able to take everything that was learned by the translations and the commentary on all of these books you see behind me and incorporate it such that I would become a walking, talking, breathing, speaking reservoir of knowledge about God, knowing more about Yahweh than anyone in thousands of years. These are the gifts of the Spirit. And the last one and the first one, of course, are sort of bookends. The first one is the Ruach of Yahweh, of course, and the last one is the Ruach of developing a profound respect for Yahweh, being the first to reintroduce his people to his name. So all of these things are part of this particular story. And as the prophet Yeshaya is seeing all of this and recognizing that things would now be different, there was hope for his people. There would be a family reunion. God would be pleased with his homecoming, and that doorway to God's home would no longer go unattended. Yehudim, Dod, Yahweh have been insulted a very long time. But that is all over now. Now, in that we are examining the Torah handbook as scribed by Yeshaya, the playbook for the one from Edom, as presented now 2,700 years ago. It is instructive to note that this is actually the third time that the great has mentioned the final Zeroah, speaking of him as the eyewitness, as distributing really the seeds of these final ingatherings and cultivating them so that there are a productive harvest, that there is a katsir and a lakat that are pleasing to Yahweh. So the previous mentioned is in the 59th chapter of Yeshaya. There's another one in the 53rd, of course, as well. But here from the 59th chapter, God says something that, boy, I feel like I wrote these exact words yesterday and again today as I was trying to post away on X and get the attention of God's people. This is what was written 2,700 years ago, saying the same thing. Truth is lacking. And there really is no one who is honest, because there's a complete lack of integrity. No one is dependable. Furthermore, anyone who turns away from that which is wrong, who departs from that which is perverted, well, they're victimized. They're attacked. They're discredited. I swear, there are times when I read something in a prophecy like this and share it with you that I recognize that the prophet was looking over my shoulder, that he saw what I saw. He experienced what I endured yesterday and again today. It's exactly what I wrote. It's exactly what I experienced. And you might say, well, so why spend any time on X? Because, well, X has become the primary news source for the world. I mean, I recognize that it's this giant cesspool of political and religious arrogance and idiocy. And it is a environment where everyone is spitting into the wind. But nonetheless, it is
The town square.
Yeah, it's the town square. It's the world's newspaper. Just because humankind has fallen to the point where all you meet in that town square are absolute nincompoops and raging lunatics. That's not all the technology's fault now, is it? So my wife is laughing. I'm crying. She's laughing. Truth is lacking. I tell you, Wookiee is infinitely smarter than 99% of those I encounter on X. And Wookiee says, and that's really saying something, isn't it? Truth is lacking. There's no one who's honest. It's just a complete lack of integrity. Yeah, even the best of them aren't dependable. Furthermore, anyone who actually turns away from, who pushes back against that which is perverted, is victimized. They're attacked and discredited. You may have noticed that my pushback man, blue arm man with the white body and the blue head, blue being Yahowah's favorite color, he's been moved off the top shelf in the center because we brought the camera angle down a little bit. And so I like the symbolism of a blue arm man who is now over my left shoulder, camera right, because he's not Atlas. He's not trying to hold up the world. No. He's trying to push the world away. He is doing what Yahowah says we must do. Push all this rubbish away. Keep it at bay. Create this lane through which we can communicate honestly and forthrightly, so that we're just not covered and smeared and slathered with the stench and stigma and the stink of progressives and their political platitudes and their religious and their just outright idiocy. And you can handle the truth to any one of these people on a silver platter, and they would just throw it back at you. They're mad at you. And so somebody, boy, if I ever found it here recently, that the harder I try on that platform, the fewer followers I have. So I probably have 200 posts over the last 2 days. And I've gone from just shy of 1,000 followers, which I guess wouldn't be bad when you consider I've only been doing it now for 3 months, to 980. Back last time I checked, it was in the 990s someplace. But every time you share something with people that is profoundly true and helpful to them, you just watch the clicker go doom 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 doom. So this is the world we live in. I don't have a choice, however. I was assigned this mission. When Yahowah asked me to do this, he did not say, hey, everybody, it's just going to love everything you say, and you're going to be received in open arms, and the world's going to be, and my people particularly, going to be so grateful for what you've said. No. Well, listen, when Yahowah himself was there with them, when he spoke directly to them, when he revealed himself through his light to them, they told him to shut up and go away. Now, I obviously, even though Yahowah is saying that he's using me as his mouth and as his voice and as his herald, at this time as his messenger, I'm infinitely less than Yahowah. Although Yahowah's pretty darn good using flawed implements. He's really skilled at doing that. But if Yahowah couldn't resonate with them, if they spit and stuck out their nose and pointed an irritating finger at Yahowah, of course, this is what I should expect. It doesn't make it any fun. I feel like, to a large degree, what Moshe felt like, when he was doing this, and no matter how much wonderfulness that he offered God's people, their liberty, enlightenment, protection, a promised land, the most valuable document in the universe with the Torah, participation in the covenant family, being cared for by God himself, being led by God himself. All they wanted to do was condemn Moshe. And, it victimized, attacked, and discredited. It goes with the territory. In fact, if you are the pastor of a megachurch, if you are a renowned rabbi, then you need to know that you're doing it wrong. You're telling people what they want to hear. It's only when you're discredited, villainized, rebuked, attacked, for having challenged that which is perverting Yahweh's testimony, that you know you're on the right side. When Yahweh witnesses this, well, it's not good company. He finds it disturbing that indeed no one exercises good judgment. So clearly, Yeshayah is not the only one that's been looking over my shoulder and witnessing what I'm enduring. And so here's God himself. Yahweh said, in fact, I think what I need to do, I'll just post this. I think that's put the menorah up there as Yahweh's symbol and quote, post this. And when Yahweh witnesses this, it is disturbing in his sight that indeed no one exercises good judgment. It is the thing that I have quarreled most against. It's one thing to recognize that people have had a propensity to be religious when all evidence tells them that's stupid. It's another thing people have a propensity to be political when political parties have constantly been self-serving and wrong. It is another altogether to forfeit judgment. And I guess that's the thing that I have most against the political and the religious, particularly progressives today. They really have forfeited the ability to think. No one exercises good judgment. All of their platitudes are the antithesis of what's true. They call Israel a colonializer, genocidal, perpetrating apartheid. And the evidence is exactly the opposite, that the Muslim nations around them have gone from millions of Jews to hundreds of Jews. And so they have perpetrated deliberately genocide against Jews. And in every Islamic country, there is apartheid. Non-Muslims, and particularly Jews, are treated like, even worse than second-class citizens. They aren't citizens at all. They're treated worse than animals. And this was also true throughout the Holy Roman Empire. It's a propensity of humankind, and that it's the same thing that was imposed with the caste systems that were prevalent in virtually every human civilization throughout time, everywhere in the world. And through it all, there just doesn't seem to be anyone with whom I can reason outside of the people who followed me to X, or who followed me to Facebook. During the same time, 90 days, we've gone from zero participation in Facebook, and without any advertising of any kind, just through posting and presentations like this one, we're up well over 2,200 people. But most of those people have come with us as part of the covenant family. And apart from those who support this effort, either at YAHOWAH.com, which is in the midst of a marvelous rework and rebranding per Yahweh's instructions, and on YouTube, Facebook, and X, Rumble, I really incur very few people that you could say exercise good judgment. And even those who are doing the right thing for the right reason, protecting Israel, for example, trying to end the war, the proxy war in Russia, so it doesn't turn into World War III, which is going to. It's very hard to find anybody that knows the whole story. And occasionally you run into somebody, like I wrote a number of articles in favor of Elon Musk because I admired the fact that, he was so inventive. To start an electric car company, and I think it's the 10th largest car manufacturing company in the world today, and to start Starlink and make internet available to the world. I'm using it right now. We're all benefiting from it. To have created SpaceX as a rocket company and outdo NASA and Boeing and everybody else in just a matter of years. His advances in robots, which is spectacular, and he's really a marvelously inventive fellow, a very charitable fellow, a guy that appears to have very good ethics. Unfortunately, he got into politics, and that hasn't gone all that well for him. He's a fish out of water there, doesn't know how to play that game, and then I see this huge disconnect between the promise of X, which he owns, and the delivery of X. I admire him for buying it and trying to make it a bastion of free speech, but it's anything but. It's the most restrictive of the social media sites now. And so you want to take a guy like that and say, well, there's a guy that can exercise good judgment, but he does so many things that are evidence that he's not exercising good judgment. I want to embrace him, but how do you do it? And there's so many examples like that. Anyway, this is Yahowah's position. I will post it next on X when this program is over. He looked and saw that there wasn't anyone, not a single individual. So he was devastated. He was appalled that there was no one to intercede to plead his case. This is Yahowah speaking of our Maker, the creator of the universe. And he is reporting to us that Yahowah, God, looked for someone through whom he could communicate. He wanted to find a single individual, just one would have been enough, that could intercede to plead his case. He could reintroduce his name, to tell his people, he's really a nice guy. He wants to do what's in our best interest. He's offering us the ultimate deal. He's trustworthy. He's kind. He has a plan, and he has invited us to participate in it. And yet, God couldn't find a soul. And his response to that was to let Yahowah know that he was devastated. He was appalled. He was disgusted with all that he had said, with all that he had done, considering who he is and what he was offering, and yet on a planet, at the time I began this, of 6 billion people, there wasn't a single person with whom he could communicate. No one was on his side. No one would intercede and plead his case. And you might say, wait a minute, why would God need you to plead his case? Well, because you wouldn't. And you say, well, he's God. He shouldn't need anybody to plead his case. Damn right he does. You got all the religious rabbis that are pushing people away, that are lying about him, that are deceiving his people. The politicians and the other clerics that are doing the same thing. The voices of not God are 1,000,000 to 1, maybe closer to 1,000,000,000 to 1. And so the truth is just completely drowned out. And God gave us this testimony all these thousands of years ago, not a single soul understood it, could communicate it in a way that would resonate with his people. And you say, okay, well, still, you haven't convinced me. Why didn't God just do it directly? What happened the last time he tried that? What did you say to him? Please tell me. I'm listening. What did you say to him? I'll tell you what you said to him. You told him to shut up and to go away. You never wanted to hear from him or see him again. God's got a really good memory. He knows that you said that. And I want to tell you something. He saw the merit in it. You were obnoxious. And so God was given no choice but to either completely ignore you forevermore or to find someone to plead his case throughout time, particularly when it was needed most. Moshe, for example. Shamuel. Dod. Yirmiyah. Yashayah. Of course, the last were Yoel, Zechariah, and Malachi. And then there was the Choder. Now, it's not fair to suggest that the Choder was some gem out there, that he was some great find just waiting to be put into action. It wasn't true. When God reached out to me 24 years ago, I didn't know enough to be dangerous. I knew how to exercise good judgment. I was pretty good at that. I was really good at that bien thing of making the connections to understand. That was a skill set. I was reasonably articulate. I had a fast processor. God could dish it up pretty quickly, and I was able to move through the information. I had an open mind. I had done what he needed most, which is to disassociate from religion and politics. I had been very political. I was exceedingly religious. I had even been conspiratorial. I had walked away from all of those things and discredited them and knew they were wrong. So I was in a place where I could be used. That's a good thing. So I had some attributes that God could have used, but it was essentially, as it relates to Yahowah, a blank slate. Now, that's not completely true because I knew that Christianity was wrong. I knew that Judaism was wrong. I knew that Islam was wrong. I would come to find out just how wrong and share how wrong in 13 volumes, but I knew they were wrong. And I knew that politics on both sides of the aisle was wrong. I had the opportunity to rub elbows with these people. I was in their home. They were in mine. I know them. So I came, like Moshe came, with a past that could be used to convey God's story, to understand God's story. But that all being true, Yahowah still was in a position where I'm still just a man, and the fact that he's committed now to only communicating through people, to his people, he was going to have to equip this one. Because while there had been none that were willing for 2,500 years, we didn't have 2,500 years now. We didn't have 1,000 years. We didn't have 100 years. We didn't have 50 years. From the moment we began, we only had 32 years. And there was no postponing anything. And we were at a baseline, flat, zero. My good buddy, Dr. Jeff, is a physician, and it's like walking into seeing the patient, and all of the monitors are flatlined. That's where we were. I'm not sure that I was much better, except for the fact that I was open, and that's when Yahowah, I like to say he cheated. And by cheating, he's exceedingly honest. But you can rig the result. And in this case, Yahowah needed to rig the result. And I was happy for him to rig the result, because I can't even imagine the consequence of having failed if I had been left to my own devices. And so that's the purpose of those 7 spirits that I spoke to you about earlier. Yahowah provided those 7 spirits so that I would understand it. One of the spirits that I didn't mention to you at the time, as I was going through, the spirit of understanding the entire story, the spirit of making the connections to understand, the spirit of knowledge, which you have to do a program like this and talk to God's people. The spirit of wisdom, of having a good processor. And being able to deduce reasoned conclusions. There was also a spirit in there that is probably the most important of all of the attributes of David, God's beloved son and chosen one. Dod is the ultimate example of Gabor. And there was the spirit of Gabor, and that is being bold. Uncompromising, capable, courageous, forthright, a man who never flinches when it comes to jumping into the fray. I will take any stripe to protect God's people. I will accept any attack to awaken a Yehudim, a Yehud, or a Israelite. The spirit of boldness. And I will tell you, you've got to have some degree of boldness to come in here every day, as I do, these 3 studios that we have up now. Turn on the lights, turn on the camera, activate the mic, and live stream to 6 different platforms simultaneously, or 7, whatever we're doing now. It takes some considerable boldness, I'll tell you. And here we are. This is what God chose to do, so that he recognized that with all of that support focused on what he had conveyed through the prophets and through the Torah, which is really a book written by a prophet, that given time and devotion, that this enormous amount of information that he was deducing by being the first to present amplified translations that are far more complete and accurate and verifiable, and then rendering reasoned conclusions from those and deriving profound insights as a result of them, that after thousands of unheralded insights and tens of thousands of conclusions and 25,000 pages of analysis and translations, that I would develop of exceedingly robust grasp of God's story, so that I could speak to you in this way. And that was really the intent. And God wanted it known that while he did cheat a bit and make this possible through the 7 spirits, that nonetheless, 100% of the information, because they didn't cheat, they gave me the tools to use. But the game actually wasn't rigged, in the sense of everything I learned by translating God's words, bereft of the diacritical marks that the rabbis put on it, referencing the oldest extant manuscripts from the Dead Sea Scrolls, that I was able to use that material to put together God's entire story and explain what's going to happen now as we go forward over this next 8.5 years. And by doing that, two things are important for God's people to know. One is, it was there available to you all the time. The most important discovery of human history is the realization that Dod is the Messiah and the Son of God who served to fulfill Pesach, Matzah, and Bikurim, which means there was no Jesus Christ. And that God has an exemplar of the covenant relationship and a means for us to participate in it. And while I'm the person who deduced that conclusion from the evidence was ubiquitous and it was undeniable. It was right out in the open. So by making it this way, such that I could explain everything by, just like we're doing now, reading from the prophet who wrote the textbook on how to be a choder, how to succeed as the man from Edom, then I'm put in a position where Yisrael, Jews, know that this was available to them all the time. And that's kind of like rubbing a bit of salt into the wound. It is, God said he was really disappointed and annoyed. Yeah, he wants you to be a little disappointed and annoyed that it was there for you the whole time. And that a goy figured it out even when you couldn't. Revealed to your people in your language, and a goy figured it out when you didn't. He's rubbing salt into the wound. Now, salt will heal a wound. So that's probably a good thing, but it's irritating, and he wants you to be irritated. He's irritated. You need to be irritated enough that you change. The second reason is also really ingenious of Yahweh. He is very smart. And that he realized that heretofore he has communicated through prophets. But the reason he communicated through prophets is the last of them revealed his prophecies in 447, 448 BCE, 2,500 years ago. And we can read what Malachi revealed and see those prophecies being fulfilled before our eyes. And there are written extant verifications of them among the Dead Sea Scrolls, so that we know that he wrote this and what he had to say, and that subsequently these prophecies, by being fulfilled, affirm that the source who inspired them can be trusted, because he exists outside the normal framework of time and can report our future to us and our past. However, guess what we don't have now? The very thing that I told you was the reason God had to intervene at this moment, the reason that Yashayah is cheering this final Zeroah. What do we lack now that there was plenty of then? Time. And what is the catalyst that makes a prophet? Time. And so without time, it would be useless to have a prophet. There would be no way for God to validate anything that I'm telling you. But because everything I'm telling you was validated in his proven prophets, then you know it's all true. It was really ingenious of God. Now, the hard part was then I had to spend, I had to, but I did. I spent 24 years building up this knowledge of what the prophets had to say so I could communicate to you. So it required learning as opposed to, just a data dump. Now, that happens to be the more enjoyable way. And by learning it, you own it. You become a living reservoir of that information. And so it is a superior choice. It's an investment, a commitment of time. And for God to prevail, he needed someone who would be willing to intervene, who would plead his case in this way. So going back to the 59th statement, if I may, I'm ad-libbing here a lot because this is just all so pertinent, so relevant to our situation and to our relationship, mine and yours, that I just want you to appreciate everything that God is communicating here. Truth is lacking. No one is honest because there's a complete lack of integrity. And absolutely no one is dependable. Furthermore, anyone who turns away from what is wrong, who departs from that which is perverted, is victimized. They're attacked and they're discredited. And so when Yahweh witnesses this, it's highly disturbing in his sight that indeed no one exercises good judgment. He looked and saw that there wasn't anyone, not a single individual. So he was devastated, even appalled, that there was no one to intercede and plead his case. I cry for my God. I celebrate that he found someone. I'm delighted that he has found me worthy of his trust. I'm honored to have been selected. I realized that I had no competition, and so I got the job by default, but nonetheless, I got it, and I've been true to it. There is no one who could ever criticize me on the basis of not being devoted to this mission. I have given it my all, and I continue to do so. And while I'm pleased that we prevail in the end, I just think of all of those thousands of years where wasn't a single person, not even among the Jews, who would listen to Yahweh. People named Yahud, beloved of Yah, who didn't love him in return. The chosen people who wouldn't choose God. It's heartbreaking, isn't it? So he looked and saw that there wasn't anyone, not a single individual. So he was devastated, even appalled, that there was no one to intercede and to plead his case. Then his Zeroah. And a moment ago we read, and Yahshua saying, my Zeroah. They're fighting each other over who, I don't know, who owns me, who controls me, who claim. Maybe it's probably the who claims me. My wife's saying that she claims me. Wookie claims me. My wife, I think, has first dibs. She's cuter than the rest of you. But I guess to be an object that Yahweh and his foremost prophet are claiming belongs to both of them. I guess that's a pretty good thing. I'm happy in all of those scenarios, but I've gone from being Yahshia's Zeroah to then his Zeroah. This would be Yahweh's Zeroah, the one cultivating the seeds for his productive harvest. His emboldened arm shepherding his flock, Zeroah Hugh, became a means to salvation through him, reaching and rescuing from harm's way as a liberator on his behalf, for freeing and delivering those wanting to approach him. Yasha Lahu. This is now the third time that this man from Edom, and who is also called the Zeroah. I think that probably the most important title of all of God's titles is actually Zeroah. But at third time, let me finish the thought, and then I'll go into that. That it's the third time that we've heard that this man from Edom, the final Zeroah, is engaged in Yasha, salvation. Now, the previous two times, Yahowah said that salvation that is being provided by the man from Edom is in collaboration with him. And this time, it's in collaboration with Yahowah. Now, do you know what the difference is between being in collaboration between Yahowah to provide salvation and being in collaboration with Yahowah to provide salvation? I'll let you think of that. What do you think the difference is? What do you think the difference is between being Yahowah's Zeroah and being Yahweh's Zeroah? Nada. Absolutely nothing. Because Yahweh speaks through Yahowah, and they convey the same message, have exactly the same purpose. So then here's Zeroah. Now, I was going to speak a little bit about the idea that Zeroah is the single most important title. There are 40 individuals that are called prophets or prophetesses by Yahweh. That's a rare group, but 40 is a goodly number. There are a number of people that are anointed Messiah. Though, of course, is the most prevalent of them. There are a number of men who are called Gabor and Gabora. Clearly, Dode is the most deserving of that title. There are a number of times that Yahweh uses the term malach to convey somebody who is delivering a message for him. And so there are lots of kings. The most important title only belongs to 3 people. Now, there are titles that only belong to one. Sort of. Like Chosen One. My Chosen One, my Firstborn Bakor. Chosen One and Firstborn only belong to Dode, but that's even sort of because Yahweh chooses everyone who is part of his covenant. And so we're all chosen. He's just the most chosen of the chosen. And Bakura means firstborn children, plural. Dode is just the firstborn of the firstborn children of the covenant. So those he's the mostest in that regard, but he isn't the only one in that regard. Zeroah is, as a title, is only used for 3 men. And 2 of the 3 men are the most important in God's story. So it does say that third guy, particularly with all of the prophecies pertaining to him, and the fact that he is really the focus of the book of Yahowah, it's not mean that he's important, but he reveals what's important at a time that is exceedingly important. Such it's important that you listen to him. But Yahowah is very clear that the first of the Zeroah was Moshe. He sowed the seeds. The most important of the Zeroah is Dode. Yahweh sings about his Zeroah status in the 89th Mizmor. And Dode defines Zeroah as it's presented in the Torah, which is sacrificial lamb. But the verbal root of Zeroah actually doesn't speak of a lamb, even though that's how it's used in the Torah. Verbal root is Zerah. And Zerah means to sow seeds, to cultivate them, and to produce a productive harvest, knowing that the seeds are offspring, human souls. And so I'm actually the Zeroah of the verbal root, where Dode is the Zeroah of the Torah's definition. But it is the most important of Yahweh's titles. And the fact that he afforded it to a third individual at this time, I think is more symbolic of Moshe and I than it is of Dode. As the embodiment of the Torah's definition, Dode himself is exceedingly important. The man and his soul, exceedingly important. Moshe was a conduit, the highest character, but he was a conduit of teaching from Yahowah. So am I. Now, the difference is that Moshe was a conduit of original teaching from Yahowah, and I'm a conduit of making that teaching from Yahowah resonate with his people at a time where they can make an informed and rational decision on the cusp of God's return. I might say that Moshe is the scribe among Zeroahs, and I'm the translator and interpreter among Zeroahs. I'm translating what was said at that time, 3,450 years ago, and making it applicable to this moment in time, to Yisrael, to Yehudim, who are in a position to listen right now and make the right decision. And so from that perspective, just as it was with Moshe, where Moshe is a man of exemplary character and intelligence and devotion, Moshe is not the message. He's a messenger. Dode is the message. And now here we are today, and I'm also a Zeroah as a messenger, not the message. And so that's a nice set of bookends, if you will, on both sides of Dode, Moshe and myself. I am, since Yahowah mentioned he was annoyed, I would tell him not to listen to this part because it would just annoy him more. But my wife, when she walked in my study this morning, she said, you know that the rabbis call Moshe a rabbi, slathering him with their title. It's just revolting. God is exceedingly angry. So then his Zeroah, the one cultivating the seeds for a productive harvest, his emboldened arm shepherding the flock, becoming the means to salvation for him, rescuing his people from harm's way, a liberator on his behalf, delivering those wanting to approach him. And again, I can hear the naysayers, why would God need to take somebody like you and make them a savior of the people when he could have just done it himself or picked one of us? But he couldn't pick you because you're disgusting. Well, not those of you who have listened and have already capitalized on this. So the rest of you, you know who I'm talking to. Rabbis are disgusting from God's point of view. That's why he couldn't pick one of them. He's disgusted by them. He's appalled by them. He's not going to work through them. They're the problem. They're not the solution. And there wasn't anybody else among the tribe that was willing to engage, to plead his case, to intercede in this way. And God doesn't work alone. He's tried to make that really, really clear to you. Do you think that God would have gone into Mitzrayim to free his people from bondage from the Egyptian government with a broken down, stuttering 80-year-old shepherd if he liked to work alone? I mean, come on, think it through. Do you think he'd have picked Dode, with the Jew with a heart as big as his head that didn't know whether he should listen to this or to this? Do you think he would have picked Dode, an 8-year-old, to work through? Somebody whose only experience was shepherding sheep. And to make that guy the guy unless the big guy is committed to working through guys. I can show you that I had nothing to offer by compared to what he's offering. And yet he talks about our collaboration every which way in all manner of prophecies throughout his entire portrait of what he wishes to achieve. It's even before we get to the garden and we're talking about the fourth day of creation. You got the greater and lesser luminary that point the way to the fulfillment of the Moed. It's everywhere. And so you got to understand what the prime objective is of God. You know what it is? Now, those of you who are part of his family know the answer to this, so don't be blabbing it out. Speaking to the rest of you. What's God's primary objective? Sure as hell isn't to be worshipped. It's not to be prayed to. Doesn't want anybody bowing down to him. He doesn't want your money. He doesn't want you to be part of some stupid cult where you're dressed in black and wearing a weasel hat. No. What is God's primary objective? It isn't for us to obey him. It isn't for us to be part of halakha. What's his primary objective? Do you know? To conceive and raise a family. He wants to be a father. He wants us to be his kids. He wants to pour his life into us, to lift us up, to enjoy everything he has conceived and will conceive in a manner where he can share it with us because it's more enjoyable that way. That is his objective. So if that's his objective, is he wants to do everything together, why would he ever do anything independently? That's the answer. That's why I'm here. No one else was willing. He needed somebody that he could work through to accomplish the reestablishment of his covenant family. And I was the lone person who was willing. Now, if you think you can catch up, I've got 24 years into this, 36 books back here. A really good start on the YAHOWAH blog. If you think you can catch up, you know, you got 14 months to the Shabuah harvest. Come on.
It'll take them a year just to read the book.
Yeah. Show up. Be accountable. You know, you got to start by accepting Yahweh's name, and there's none of you seem even willing to take the first step. Then you got to walk away from religion. And I don't think any of you are willing to do that. And you're going to stop being political. That writes them most of the rest of you out. But that's where we are. So that's why Yahweh has chosen to save his people through his Zeroah. Just as he has announced through Yashayah that the man from Edom will save his people in a collaboration with Yashayah. Thereby, the realization that he was right and that he had engaged correctly was upheld and sustained. Who engaged? Who was upheld? Who was sustained? Who was correct? Do you know the answer to this one? I've told you. Not me. I think I am those things, but that's not what he's talking about here. The realization is that Yahweh was right. And because Yahweh was right, and because Yahweh engaged correctly, everything that he had promised, everything that he wanted to achieve was upheld and sustained. Now, for that to be true, the person that he chose to work through the final Zeroah, this man from Edom, also has to be right. And he has to engage correctly. And he has to be upheld and sustained. Because what is he doing? He's pleading and interceding on behalf of Yahweh to his people. Therefore, now we're back to the same question I asked earlier. What's the difference between being Yashayah Zeroah and being Yahowah Zeroah? What's the difference between Yahweh being right and the person through whom he has chosen to work being right? Zero. Same message, same purpose, same result. Now, before we go further into our analysis of this rather profound reaffirmation of the role and timing and identity and purpose of the Zeroah, this is a lovely time for us to conclude this program on the man from Edom, suitably attired in red today. I want to thank you for listening. Tonight at 6 o'clock Eastern, we'll have our family hour, and we will continue with our reporting on all that can be known about the upcoming harvest of Shabuah and a continuation of Katsir harvest. I hope you'll join us then. I thank you for listening. I am Craig Winn, and this has been the YAHOWAH blog.